Hi, my name is Dr. Sven Verlinden. I'm a horticulturist here at West Virginia University, and today I want to tell you a little bit about the poinsettia. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of the plant, and I'll talk also a little bit about the care of a poinsettia before and after Christmas. Poinsettia is native to Mexico. It's native to the southern parts of Mexico, semi-arid areas of Mexico. And that's important because you should never overwater your poinsettia. And so its native habitat is kind of a drier climate, and so it's very important not to overwater the plant. Now, that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be watered. It should be watered on a regular basis, but probably only once a week is plenty for most homes. The plant itself is called the poinsettia because it was brought to the United States by a person called Robert Joel Poinsett. He was a South Carolina native who was one of the first ambassadors to Mexico. And he saw the plant and he shipped it back to the Carolinas. Now, that was in the early 1800s. And from that point on, the plant really didn't take off as a holiday plant or as an ornamental plant in the United States. The poinsettia was popularized by the Ecke Ranch out of California, and the way that they made this plant popular is by giving some of these plants away to local TV channels. And so as people were watching the news, they saw this plant, and that really popularized it as a plant that would then become connected with Christmas. But originally the plant was really only grown in the field as a cut flower or as a shrub for basically the landscape. Now, the plant itself is very sensitive to cold, so it can only be grown in areas of the world where you don't have any freezes or frosts. And the other thing that you need to know about a poinsettia is that when you buy a poinsettia, it should never be exposed to lower than about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Because if the plant is exposed to lower temperatures than that, it will show what's called chilling injury. And chilling injury will be drooping of the leaves. It will turn dark in color. It just will look very, very sad if it's exposed to those low temperatures. So that's a little bit of background about the poinsettia. Next, I want to talk a little bit more about the care of the poinsettia. So as I mentioned earlier, and as I mentioned before, the plant should not be overwatered because it is originally from a semi-arid region of Mexico. So that's one thing. It does not need much additional fertilizer for the first month and a half that you have it in the home. After that, small amounts of fertilizer would work. Now, one question that we get a lot is, how do I get my poinsettia to rebloom? That is a very difficult thing to do, and you have to be very, very committed to growing these plants in your house if you want them to rebloom. They are short day plants, so that means when it is dark in your home, more than about 12 hours a day, the plant will routinely try to flower, and it will not grow into a nice big plant with flowers on top. So one of the things that you have to do when you're trying to rebloom this plant is, after Christmas, it would be to cut it back and then make sure that it is always in conditions of more than about 12 to 13 hours of light a day. And then as the plant grows, it can be cut back and it will bush out some. And then by the time that you want it to rebloom again, which is in September of the next year, you need to make sure that it is not exposed to any artificial light. So you need to make sure that it is always in natural daylight, but it is not exposed to any kind of artificial light beyond that, because the plant does sense that amount of darkness. And the important thing about that is that that's when the flowers start to develop again. So it's a very long process. So after Christmas, cut it back, make sure that it is in plenty of light so it doesn't start to bloom again. Make sure that the day length that the plant perceives is plenty long, and that can be done with fluorescent or incandescent lights. or LEDs, more, for today's type of home. And then you just want to grow that plant throughout the year in your house. And it can get fairly big at that point, and it does have to be fertilized a little bit. And then in September, you need to make sure that it is exposed to shorter and shorter days, and make sure that it's not exposed to artificial light during the time that it's converting its growing tips to flowering.